Open up the door.
Activists say they want her arrested.
The white woman who accused 14-year-old Emmett Till of whistling at her and making sexual advances has died.
Trigger warning. Y'all come on, get ready with me while we talk about some black history. July 25th in 1941, Emmett Till was born to Mamie and Louis Till in Chicago, Illinois. But at the age of 6, he contracted polio, and he did survive it, and he did recover. However, it did leave him with a persistent stutter. And as a young child, he was actually embarrassed by the fact that he did have a stutter. So to replace stuttering, instead he would whistle, especially if they were words that started with a B. Remember that. Ultimately, he was just a kid that was full of life. He was your average teenager. He liked to play jokes and pranks on his friends, and he participated in a lot of pickup baseball games. In 1955, his uncle had come up to Chicago to visit Emmett Till and his mom, and he was telling him all kind of stories of how it was down in Mississippi. Emmett was very intrigued, and so he asked his mother if he could go and visit, and she agreed to let Emmett go. But as he was her only child, she also did warn him that it was drastically different in Mississippi than it was where they lived in Chicago. For instance, a young black activist named Lamar Smith was shot and killed outside of a courthouse a week before Emmett Till arrived in Mississippi. And the 3 white men who were suspected and subsequently arrested were then let go and never charged for the crime. Emmett Till took stock in everything that his mother said and assured her that he understood. He touched down in the Mississippi Delta on August the 21st, 1955, and his life was taken only 4 days later on August the 24th, 1955. A young white woman named Carolyn Bryant made claims to her husband and his brother that Emmett Till had come into the convenience store and whistled at her while also pulling on her arm and waist and making unwanted sexual advances. Emmett Till was later abducted from his uncle's home by a mob of white men to include Carolyn Bryant's husband and his brother, as well as Carolyn Bryant. She was present, as she was the one who came along with them so that she could identify Emmett Till as the one who had assaulted her. They incapacitated him, tied him up, threw him in the back of a green pickup truck, and drove down towards Money, Mississippi. Sometime during that ride, he became conscious again, and that is when they began to pistol whip him vigorously. They then shot him and weighted his body down in the river with a fan. 3 days after this crime, 2 boys were fishing in the Tallahatchie River, and that is when they discovered Till's disfigured body. He had been shot above the right ear. His eye was dislodged from his socket, fan blade fastened around his neck with barbed wire. He was stripped of every bit of clothing, and the only way that Mamie Till, his mother, was able to identify him was by the silver ring that she had given him that had his father's initials on it, LT. As there were many witnesses to what happened to Emmett Till the evening of August the 24th, the men who were responsible were arrested, and they were in fact tried. During that trial, Carolyn Bryant took the stand, in which she fabricated her entire interaction with Emmett Till. In 2018, the Justice Department reopened the Emmett Till murder investigation based on a quote that Carolyn Bryant had made in a book where she stated that she had lied about all of the sexual advances that Emmett Till had supposedly made towards her. She said that there was nothing physical, there was nothing sexual, and there was nothing menacing about his behavior towards her. Carolyn Bryant's family vehemently denies that she ever recanted, that she ever admitted to anything. And of course we know why, because there is no way that the generation after generation after generation of Bryant Donhams would have ever survived that. During my research, it was so easy for me to surmise what truly happened when he went inside that convenience store. Remember, I told you that Emmett Till had polio, and he recovered from that polio, but one of the lasting effects from that was his stutter. Because he was embarrassed by that stutter, he whistled. And by Mamie's account, he struggled with words that began with the letter B. As a mother of boys who were once young teenage boys, I can tell you right now, when they go inside a convenience store at that age, they want chips, they want candy, they want soda, they want bubble gum. I guarantee that Emmett Till was probably trying to gather himself, and he was probably asking her where the bubble gum was. And because he couldn't fully get it out due to his stutter, he whistled. And Carolyn Bryant, who mistakenly found herself attractive, thought that that whistle belonged to her. She knew that that information alone would not garner the rage that it needed. And so that is why she went on to fabricate the rest of the interaction that ultimately led to the murder of an innocent 14-year-old boy. And this behavior is still pertinent. This behavior still happens in the present day. Like Michelle Bishop, look her up if you are not familiar, that walks up to the home of a black man named Michael Jenkins, knocks on his door, and asks him if he lives in the neighborhood because it's a nice neighborhood in Ohio. And she was scared because she saw his car driving slowly, and she was outside with her children, and so it scared her. She was so scared that she walked up to his front door, knocked on it, asked him did he live there, and once he said yes, she said that she didn't believe him. Do you know that this woman proceeds to turn around and run off, dialing 911? It's all on a Ring camera. Dialing 911 and yelling and screaming and saying that she is afraid and that this black man was trying to harm her, that she was scared for her life and her children's lives. This is why sharing all of our history is important. There are so many successful and powerful black people in this world, but it came at a cost. It came with compromise, and it came with sacrifice, and it came by way of DE&I initiatives. Emmett Till's story is unfortunately not the only story that is infused into our history, that is painfully infused into our history, but it is definitely one that should be highlighted, and his life should be celebrated. Until the next time, y'all be blessed.